Courtesy of Bow Sports.com, Stitcher.com, iTunes. You can subscribe to this lovely, sexy, wonderful podcast for free. Tune in media for your mobile devices, Google Play Podcasts, and we are also on Spotify. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the show that we so lovingly call Bow on Bulls. The show totally, utterly, and foreverly dedicated to the Chicago Bulls and NBA talk. I am Big Dave.
I'm C-Dub.
Dub, I don't even want to waste no time. I want to get right to this. So, go ahead. No, you got something to say.
Like our guest said, he had all the time in the world. He had nothing to do.
Yeah, but this is more for
watch
me,
the game, chilling, eating some food, watch the game.
I know, man, but I'm nerding out right now.
He can wait, man. He can wait. He ain't doing that.
I can't. That's like I can't.
Oh, okay.
I'm nerding out. I can't.
Okay. All right.
So, I've been trying to figure out how to introduce this guest. Like, since he told me he would actually grace us and come on this show, I've been trying to figure out how to introduce him, and I couldn't figure it out. So I figured the best way to do it is just basically to tell a story. So I'll tell a story.
All right.
So when I was doing Bulls Outsiders, I love doing Bulls Outsiders. It's amazing. And after every show, I would call Chris, and we would talk about the show, how it looked, how it went, what was funny, what he liked, and then we talk about the game, just random things. And I was having one conversation with Chris, and I said, well, Chris, one time, man, I said, you know what, Chris, today Mark walked in and, we started talking about, and Chris said, stop. He said, dude, Mark Shanowski. I said, dude, I know Mark Shanowski. And we just started laughing and thought it was absolutely and completely ridiculous that what I do afforded me the fact that I get to know this person right here, man. I have been watching him for I don't know how long. I've been looking up to him for I don't know how long. Always just watch him, and I feel at ease when I watch him do a show. Seeing him do his job and do what he did while I was doing Bulls Outsiders was amazing. I was just sitting there studying and soaking it in and just watching it, man. I was just blown away, man. He's honestly one of my favorites to watch, and it's been one of my favorites for a very long time. I'm very happy that he is back on the local scene, on the local media scene, man, because he is back. He was on ABC 7 Chicago. I'm gonna redo that. He's back on the local media scene at ABC 7 Chicago. And he's also on his Gimme the Hot Sauce podcast, where he hosts along with the great Stacey King. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Shanowski. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Mark Shanowski.
Wow, that was something. I tell you what, after that introduction, I should ask to get paid for this. I mean, this is pretty impressive stuff.
You told us, man, you scrap for some cash, man, on podcast. So
anything you give us will be an improvement for what we're getting. So trust me. But Mark,
I got a story to tell. Story to tell before we go into this.
Sure.
Our good friend Kevin Anderson, Bulldog, went back in the days when Bulls Outsiders was just a concept that they were thinking of. He asked me, he said, hey, would you mind taking a look at some of the auditions that we did and give me some feedback on who you think was good and who was not so good? And, I looked at most of the people that came through. I don't think I saw everybody, but I said, the one guy you got to have on the show is Big Dave. I said, Big Dave is fantastic. Come on, Mark. You got my seal of approval right from the start, my man.
Come on, Mark. Don't do this to me, Mark. Come on, Mark. Don't do this to me, man.
Mark, he would not. Man. He would worry about the auditions. He'll be like, "Am I right?" I said, "Dave, I know you're fine. Like, I know you're good. This is what you're like built for. Like, this is you."
Yeah.
And he's all concerned and everything. I'm like, "Dude, you got it. Don't worry about it." I'm like,
no, trust me, because I had a horrible day that day, Mark. Like, I'm trust me, my Uber broke down on the way there. I had to walk. I got lost. I had somebody walk me over there. I still didn't know where I was going. My phone went out when I was charged. It was I didn't have my phone to call the Uber to get home. I had to catch a cab. The cab didn't know where my car was. I couldn't call Chris to know. It was crazy. Like, it was a crazy day, and everybody was great. And you know the saying, Mark, like, when everybody's good, then you're usually the one that isn't. And I was like, everybody was really good. So I'm like, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I just wasn't good, man. And man, dude, No, that's crazy, Mark. Thank you, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now do you believe me, Mark? Dave, do you believe me now that you?
No, I believe Mark. That's what I believe. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
And the funny thing is that, everyone, if they were doing odds on most likely to be selected for Bulls Outsiders, I mean, C-Red Fred was the odds-on favorite. And, he brought his C-Red Fred that night, but you blew him away.
Yeah, Matt always told me that's the only good thing he liked about Fred is that he brought me into his life.
Wow.
I love some of their Twitter battles. It's just hilarious stuff. Because C-Red throws out some just crazy stuff, and Matt never passes the opportunity to slap it down.
Never. I mean, absolutely never, Mark. Like, I'm like, how did you even see that? How did you even? It's like he's got his alerts on for Fred. I'm like, you tell me you hate him, but there's nobody you love following more than C-Red Fred, man.
I mean, at the end of the season, even C-Red Fred couldn't defend Denzel Valentine anymore.
My God.
He even got tired of it.
Oh, like, man. I'm ready for him to go, man, and go somewhere else. I'm tired.
Gotta go.
It's time, man. Like, goodness, come on, it's that hard. They call me the same. His friend Mark calls me the sane C-Red Fred. That's what he calls me that because I'm just as positive, but I know when to get off the road.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I know when to get off at the exit.
C-Red Fred will ride something for a long time, but eventually, though, he will come to the truth. When the truth approaches him, he recognizes it at some point. It is a matter of time. And he moves forward.
Yeah, it was.
I love some of the crazy trades that people throw out. He likes to put his polls up there. Where we're going to trade Felicio and Sato for Dame Lillard. That kind of shit.
C-Red Fred loves the attention, man.
Yeah, but some of that stuff is you have to dig through it. But some of it, you're like, you know what? That's a really good point. Like when he comes on our show and we have conversation with him. I'll be like, you know what? That's a really good point, Fred. Like, that makes sense. You would say something like, and then he goes on Twitter and I'm like, okay, yeah, where's this guy? I don't know this dude. What happened? Something happened along the way. You know what I mean? No, that's my guy though. And without Fred, like I say all the time, without Fred, I wouldn't even been on, Bulls Outside.
Yeah.
He's the one who brought me.
I'm just messing with Fred. He's a friend and he is so passionate about the Bulls. He knows the NBA inside and out. He is definitely a good source for Bulls information and Bulls opinions. It's just sometimes the passion just makes him do crazy things on Twitter.
The problem is that when he comes on our show, we check him. Twitter, you don't get checked, right? You tweet and you wait. On our show, he says something crazy. Me and Dave like, nah, he cuts it off.
Yeah, you're like, can't go there, Fred.
Yeah, the good advice is always to reread your tweet before you send it. I don't think Fred does that.
It's going to be called the C-Red Fred rule.
The C-Red Fred rule, yes.
T-shirt or something.
Absolutely, man. Mark, man, I do have a couple questions for you. I just wanted to know personally for myself. One, I know you probably don't know this, but I mean, you're looked up to by I don't know how many people. Honestly, it's just the truth. But I want to know, who did you look up to in media that made you say, okay, I really want to do this, or I really can do this?
Well, it's interesting today. Kind of took me back to my youth. A good friend of mine who still works in Milwaukee media did an interview with the original Milwaukee Bucks broadcaster, a guy by the name of Eddie Doucette, who actually did some national work on USA Network back when they had the NBA package a long time ago. And he did the NBA draft for a number of years. But Eddie started as, a young, late 20s, early 30s radio guy with the Milwaukee Bucks when they began as an expansion team in the late 1960s. And his style was so exciting. This is before cable TV and streaming services, and you can get any game you want. I mean, when you saw your team on national TV, that was a huge thrill. Either you went to the arena or you maybe saw 2 or 3 games a year on TV. So if you were a fan of the team, I had my little transistor radio in my bedroom. I'm listening to Eddie Doucette call Milwaukee Bucks games. And they were so lucky because, they came into the league as an expansion team at the perfect time. They have a terrible first year. They win the coin flip with Phoenix for the first pick, and they get Lou Alcindor, who, of course, later became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they won a championship 2 years later. They haven't won one since. So, it's been 50 years, and I thought this was going to be my year that I could celebrate another Milwaukee title. And then Giannis has that horrible knee injury yesterday. So, but anyway, back to Eddie Doucette. He had a style that was so captivating captivating, and you could just visualize everything he was saying, describing the action on the court. And I just thought, at that point when the Bucks came into existence, I think I was like in 6th grade. And, I thought if I don't make the NBA, which was of course not going to happen, that's what I'd like to do, be a broadcaster.
Well, I know you might, if that's the guy you were checking in media, who was the one you were modeling your actual game after, like your actual basketball game?
Well, back in the day, I was playing my basketball before the 3-point shot got introduced. And
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, I probably would have got more minutes in high school because I was a good long-range shooter. But the coach would always yell at me for shooting from too far away. If that shot would have been worth an extra point, I'd have got more run.
Your average went up by like what, 2 points?
Right.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
Difference though. 2 points is the difference.
No, it makes a major difference. What was your best game? Like, what was the best game that you had? We ask this question to every hooper who comes on here, but what was your best game that you remember that you had?
Well, I was just a support player, in high school. I was the guy that passed the ball to the 2 stars that we had. We actually won our Milwaukee City championship my senior year.
Oh,
and
wow.
that was, great experiences. And I still keep in touch with those guys to this day. But I was one of those guys that would never turn down an opportunity to get involved in a rec league or park district or whatever. So I played it up until my early 40s, just playing in leagues. And I just loved to play. And, when I was in my mid 20s and stuff, I could score pretty well in those leagues, but it was mostly bum slaying. There weren't a lot of great players in those leagues.
I hear you, Mark.
We got a curse word for Mark. We got him saying bum slayers.
I hear you, Mark.
Yeah, I'll give credit to my guy Jason Goff on that. That's his favorite term. So, yeah. But no, I mean, those are fun times back when you thought that you were really good, but when you looked across the court and saw the guys you were playing, well, you really weren't that good. You just were better than everybody else.
Wasn't going to be the one. Let me ask you, because when we had Joe Cowley on, and he told us that coming from Cleveland, going to Chicago was the mecca for him as far as journalism and sports journalism was concerned. He didn't want to go anywhere else. It was strictly Chicago. Was that your same mindset, or did you have another city in mind that you kind of held in that regard?
No, my goal getting into broadcasting was either to do play-by-play in the NBA or get back to Milwaukee and do local sports. And I was able to do that. And fairly early in my career, I got a job at the ABC affiliate in Milwaukee. And, I got a lot of family in Wisconsin in the Milwaukee area, and people got a chance to see me. And that was really cool. Getting a chance still to be young enough that I was still hanging out with a lot of people I went to high school and college with, and have those people get a chance to, experience my broadcasting career as well. And when I applied for the job at Channel 7 originally, I never thought I would get it. They were looking for a 4th sports guy, just do some reporting and some fill-in anchoring. And I just sent some clips down here, just thinking, it'll be a good experience, see what kind of feedback I get on my work. And the news director from WLS called me and asked me if I'd come down for an interview. Again, I still thought I won't get it. And so I just drove down. Tim Weigel was the sports director at the time. And, so I met everybody at the station, legends, Floyd Calber, John Drury, Joel Daly, all those people are walking around the newsroom. And here I'm this 30-year-old guy from Milwaukee auditioning. So, I did the interview and I thought, oh, that was cool. That was fun. And Tim goes, well, you're not done yet. He goes, we're going to have you on set, do a show. And I'm like, holy shit, I actually have to audition by doing a show on the set. Wow. So they basically gave me some scripts from the show the night before, said, go to it. And fortunately that went well. A couple of days later, the news director called and offered me the job. And I had no inkling that I was going to be moving to Chicago at that point. And that's how it all started. 1990, I started in Chicago, and I've been here ever since.
Hey, after all these years, though, in your career, what do you think is the one thing that people saw in you to give you that job? Looking back,
well, I think it has a lot to do with my knowledge and preparation. I think that all the time I put in watching these games and studying statistics before analytics became in vogue, I just felt like no one was going to outwork me, that I would always be prepared. I would have total command of the teams that I was assigned to report on. And, you know, I'm just a grinder. I was never going to miss a day. You know, thank God I've never been seriously ill. You know, I don't know if I've ever called in sick in my life. So, you know, I'm always there. You know, they always say that the biggest ability is availability. And, you know, I'm always there to answer the bell. And no matter what the sport, I remember the first thing they did when I started Channel 7, they put me on a plane to Edmonton to cover the Blackhawks and the Oilers. And I got to tell you, the one sport I'm not real good on is hockey. So they send me on the road and go cover the Blackhawks in the playoffs. And first of all, I was blown away by how nice a lot of those guys were. And second of all, just how big the Stanley Cup playoffs are, because we didn't have a professional NHL team in Milwaukee. So I wasn't really tuned into the whole NHL scene. And that was the first thing I had to do. And strangely enough, I actually, when I went back to Channel 7, I talked to somebody who knew me from the first time around. And he said one of the things I was blown away with was how well you handle hockey right away, because, you know, this is a little inside the beltway, but, you know, you're doing a live report. And when you're in Canada, well, actually, if you're in any city that's not Chicago, you don't have a return feed on the video. And night after night, not only was I there to get interviews and do features and stuff, they wanted me to do the highlights of that night's game. Well, I didn't have a monitor. I couldn't see it. The only way I knew that the play would change was by hearing the background sound and the crowd reaction. So, you know, here I am, a hockey novice, doing hockey highlights with no video. I'm doing them blind. And I guess that caught the attention of a lot of people, that I was able to jump right in and get that done.
Yeah. Yeah, boy. That would catch attention. That's wow. Dude,
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. That's but that goes back to what you just said. Like, nobody's going to outwork me. Like, no matter what the sport is, I'm gonna know it in and out. And man, that's incredible. Wow, I'm blown away by that. So,
and I was working really hard to try to learn hockey in 2 days. Believe me.
I know you were.
Did you have any knowledge of it? Like, any knowledge of hockey at all? Like, even just a tiny bit before that?
Well, I knew the basic rules, obviously, and I knew some of the stars of the game. But in terms of, you know, going up and down the Blackhawks roster and who the third line centerman is and what the weaknesses of the third defensive pairing, no, I had no idea.
Well, let me ask you this: How did you go about researching? Because we're spoiled these days. I was around pretty much before the internet, but back then, how did you do your research?
Well, the nice thing about the playoffs were that there was tons of information available. I mean, both teams would flood you with information. Back then, everything's on paper. They give you these lengthy game notes that are like 25 pages long with every possible stat. And that was what I used mostly. You know, I did go back with a lot of the newspapers leading up to the playoffs and look at a lot of the articles about the team. But yeah, you don't have the same access to the stuff that you do now. I mean, now you can get statistical breakdown on any player in the minor or major leagues and try to figure it out that way. But yeah, you had to be a little bit creative, but you could also get away with more because people weren't as up on that stuff either. So if you might have made a little bit of an exaggeration, no one's going to really catch you on it.
He's 6'8", 320 pounds. Like, really?
Your favorite LeBron.
Right. LeBron with skates, right.
Yeah.
So you get here in 1990. So obviously you arrive at the height of Bullsdom, and right when everything is about to begin and about to kick off. What was your first Bulls memory for you since you got here in 1990? What was the first Bulls memory for you that you remember about that team?
Well, I was a Jordan fan going back to the shot he hit against win the national championship for North Carolina against Georgetown. So Michael was on my radar right from the very start, and then of course he just blew up in his next 2 years at North Carolina. And you know, Jordan was a phenomenon. Everyone remembered the 63-point game against Larry Bird and the Celtics in the playoffs. And I remember I was packing up, getting ready to move to Chicago, and I was able to get a feed on. It must have been a national game because there would be no feed. But I saw the game where he scored 69 points against the Cavaliers, which happened just before I started at WLS. And as that playoff run continued, I was actually at Game 7 of the Bulls Pistons series at Palace of Auburn Hills, which was brand new at that point. And I had packed to go on to Portland because had the Bulls won, they would have been, gone on to the finals, and they were going to send me directly from Detroit to Portland. And obviously that didn't go real well because that was the infamous Scottie Pippen headache game. And, they just got blown out. They got the doors blown off in that game. But it was just a kind of, I got there in April and I did hockey and I did some baseball and then I was on the Bulls and I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, by the time I got into the sports office and put my, my travel bag away, my head was spinning, and I had covered all these great events, and I had just started. And I had only been there for a few months.
That's amazing. So the Bulls' first championship, you cover. So going to that, I'm sure you were, involved in that series and going to that final series, watching Magic, watching Michael. What kind of stood out to you, and was there something that you saw that just let you know, like, oh man, there's no way the Bulls are losing this series?
Well, if you remember the first game, Michael Jordan had a chance to win it, and his shot rimmed out. And you're thinking, man, they lost the game at home, against a team that experienced with Magic and those guys. That how are they going to come back and win the series? Then he had the spectacular game in Game 2 to even things up. But the key was, Phil deciding to let Scottie Pippen guard Magic, and Scottie, with his length and his size, really bothered Magic. And that was really kind of the turning point in the series. Of course, he got hurt later in that series and was not that effective. Magic, I'm talking about. Right. So, as the momentum built, the Bulls were the younger, hungrier, more aggressive team, and LA just kind of faded. But the way that whole thing started with a tough loss in Game 1, you're thinking, their chances aren't going to be that good. But by the time you got to Games 4 and 5, the Bulls were clearly the better team.
Yeah, because they were going against Tony Smith at point guard at that point in time. And, like it was over, like it was a wrap. And then
Eldon Campbell as a rookie was playing minutes.
Right. And Sam Perkins had the game of his life in Game 1.
That shot with around. He could just fell in the rim.
Right.
He couldn't be stopped. Did you have I'm talking from the first three. Did you have a favorite team to cover from the first three?
Yeah, I was a big fan of Craig Hodges because I covered him in Milwaukee. So I really got into the fact that I got a chance to cover him again in Chicago. Of course, he won the 3-point shootout at All-Star Weekend. And if you talk to Craig, such a good guy. And, he had a smile that would light up the room. And it was, when you think back on how his career ended and, all the bitterness that's left over, it's just a sad thing. We had him on the podcast I do with Stacy. And, he was very candid, very, talked about it very openly. And, he just felt like he was cheated out of, a couple of would have been really good years. And he just wonders what it'd be like if he was playing in today's NBA with his ability to shoot the three ball. I mean, teams would be killing themselves trying to get Craig Hodges on their team.
No question. And he played the 1 and the 2. So he'd be a monster in either one.
When he was in Milwaukee, he was their starting point guard. And when he came to Chicago, he was more of a specialist. So, I liked Craig as a person. And so I would say, probably that second team was the one that I really enjoyed covering. And, they had that great comeback at Chicago Stadium against Portland to win that championship and, dancing on the scorer's table, celebrating a championship in front of the home fans. That was awfully cool. And then 93, I got a chance to go to Phoenix and that was a great series. I mean, that's Charles Barkley at the height of his powers. He won the MVP that year. And remember that double overtime game? It was a crazy score, like 136 to 135 or something like that. And the Bulls conceivably could have swept that series after winning the first 2 in Phoenix. And then it became a dogfight. Look, I was in Phoenix for Game 6 when they won it. And it looked like, Phoenix had the momentum and they were going to force a Game 7. And then, we saw how it ended again. Again, the Bulls just had that knack because of their leader, Michael Jordan, making the big plays down the stretch. And then the last play, John Paxson, where he stamped his place in Bulls history forever, knocking down that 3.
That was going on. Did you know that you were sort of like in the midst of history of Chicago? Did you sit back and go, wow, I'm involved in something great. I'm on TV, I'm involved with a team. This is like history. Now I'm going to be on camera. I'm going to be, did you feel it then in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, even before I got to Chicago, as I mentioned, I knew how special Michael Jordan was. And, I thought, initially that this is going to be really special, covering this guy as he gets into his prime and really is ready to take over the league. Obviously, they had to get through the Pistons, which took a little longer than Michael would have liked, but they cleared that hurdle. They beat the Knicks in some great playoff battles. The infamous Charles Smith 4 blocks underneath, which was a lot of fun.
All clean.
So yeah. I mean, you just knew that this group was headed for something special. But just the fact, and that's why the whole LeBron Jordan debate always comes down to, Michael was 6-0 in the finals, never went to a game 7. I mean, case closed in my opinion.
Nothing else to say. So I have to ask this question for Chris, Mark. I have to get your opinion on this. Do you think the John Starks dunked on Michael Jordan?
Oh, stay stop right there. No, my friend. Because you said,
I have to ask you this.
Why'd you give it credit by prefacing the question that way? You should have just said the dunk he did on the Bulls.
The dunk he did on the Bulls in Game 2 in Madison Square Garden with the left hand where Horace Grant and Michael Jordan. Do you think that John Starks dunked on Michael Jordan?
Well, sure he did. Yeah.
Mark, he didn't even jump. I was liking you, Mark, at first and everything, about the Jordan stuff. Now you come in here giving York that credibility or that stupid highlight. No one jumped. There are films of him, John Starks dunking, and no one's in the frame. You have to be in the frame. He get dunked on. I'm sorry, you still.
This is a professional here. He's talking clear. He's telling you that he got.
Oh yeah, whatever.
Come on, man.
Did I persuade you, Mark? Did I convince you that you have to be in the you still think he dunked on Jordan?
Yeah, I guess by that technicality, you've got a point. Yeah,
but
you have to. It was a great dunk. But I refuse to think. I just don't like when people say he dunked on Jordan. No one jumped. You have to, you have to at least compete and attempt to block.
Well. All right, Mark.
I had
to ask, man. I had to get his opinion. I wanted to get Mark's opinion. I never asked him that. I wanted to get his opinion. So you work with a legend in Norm Van Leer. What can you tell us about Norm that hasn't? I'm sure it's been said a million times, but please, you can say it again to us about working with him, what you learned from him, how he kind of went about teaching the game to people like me and Chris, man. What did you feel just about Norm?
Norm was fantastic. I mean, everything about him was 100% real. Talking to him before games, watching games together, doing the shows. I mean, the guy lived an unbelievable life. He was taken from us way too soon. But, some of the stories he would tell about, going out on the town with different athletes, different entertainers. He used to hang out with guys from the group Chicago, talking about, meeting Mick Jagger and stuff. I mean, he was just 100% energy, and, he stuffed so much life into the period he was on this earth that, Norm didn't get cheated. And it was the funny thing about working with him was a lot of times, I think this happens with a lot of ex-athletes. They spent their whole career playing their sport, and sometimes they just get bored watching it. So the Bulls, play 82 games, and there were times where during the game, he'd be over on the side watching a Law and Order rerun instead of watching the game. And then we'd get on set, and he'd get all emotional about something, talking about somebody offending the game with how they did something. And I wanted to say to the audience, well, Norm, you didn't even watch the game tonight. What are you talking about? That was kind of the running joke. That Norm could talk better about what happened on tonight's Law and Order rerun than what happened in the Bulls game.
So Law and Order was it, huh?
Hey man, I can't blame him for some of those seasons.
It's a good show, man.
Loved it, yeah.
It's a good show. I can't blame him for some.
But no, I mean the thing is, he would keep an eye on the game, but it's not like he was pouring over every possession. And I think that happens. You've seen it when you were in there. Sometimes, Kendall will walk over to the snack and get a bag of Doritos. You won't see him for 20 minutes. I mean, they're not worried about missing, 5-10 possessions and the fact that it's going to, obviously a guy could get injured or something weird could happen. But for the most part, in the NBA, you play the first half to get to the second half. and you play the third quarter to get to the fourth quarter. And most of the time it comes down to the last 5 minutes. So, that's one of the things that's great about the sport. It's also one of the things that the casual fan doesn't like, that they feel like you don't have to watch the whole game in order to get the feel for it. But, some of the best times with Norm were away from doing the shows. I mean, he had such a big heart. And he if you were a friend of Norm's, he would do anything for you. Just a really generous man. He did a lot of work for charities. Just a really good guy. And the sad thing was, I've always felt like towards the end of his life, he was having some health issues, and I always felt like he was living kind of a lonely existence. His kids were out in California, and he didn't really have a lot of family around, and that was the one thing I wish I would have spent more time with Norm, had him done more social things, had more dinners with him, because it seemed like at times he just didn't have that circle of close friends and family that everybody looks for.
Mm. Did Norm ever throw you off your game? Because honestly, Mark, I've never seen you be thrown off, your game. Like, you always seem like you're completely on point and you're in control of everything. But Norm was always a wild card. So you never knew what was really coming. Did he ever kind of just throw you off?
Well, there were a lot of times where he would get crazy angry for no reason about something. We'd run a highlight, or somebody would say something in a post-game interview, and then he'd just go off on this tangent where he just ripped somebody for 2 minutes. That's kind of like what's going on with the White Sox right now with Ozzie Guillen, where that show has become kind of a must-watch thing, because the rants and the improvisation where you don't really know what's going to happen. And, it's been interesting. Frank Thomas has been doing a lot more shows this year.
Yeah.
And when Frank first got into broadcasting, like most ex-athletes, he was afraid of offending anyone, and he was kind of tepid with his opinions. But now he's kind of stepped up his game. He's done national work at Fox, which I think has brought him out as well. And that show's a lot of fun to watch. And I felt like with Norm at his heyday, you just never knew what he was going to say. And people, back then, he was working during the Skiles years and the start of the Derrick Rose era before he passed. And he was so excited to see, Derrick Rose coming to Chicago, a hometown kid playing the way he did. And he loved everything about the way Derrick played, because, Derrick brought that passion to every night's game, which is what Norm always embodied. So it was a shame that he didn't get a chance to see more of Derrick's career.
That's real.
What do you thought about his jersey being retired, or how the organization treated Norm after before he passed?
I think the whole jersey thing is very subjective depending on the organization. I mean, some organizations just hand that out like candy, and I think it loses some of its meaning. I mean, I grew up in Milwaukee, and they got about 12 jerseys retired, which is kind of crazy. They've won one championship. Yeah, I mean, like Brian Winters and Junior Bridgman, they've got their numbers retired, and I'm like, really? I mean, these were nice players. And then John McLaughlin, who was the original Buck and who was a broadcaster forever. So I kind of get that because of his long time with broadcasting. But they retired Bob Lanier's number. They didn't win anything when Lanier was there. He was on the back end of his career. His best years were with Detroit, obviously. Who else did they retire? There's literally about 10 numbers retired. That's why I think with the Bulls, the numbers that they retired really mean something. And, people have said, well, should they retire Rodman's number? I mean, Rodman really played his role well on those 3 championship teams. I don't think they should retire Rodman's number. And, in terms of Norm, Norm was there, about 7-8 years on some really good teams, but, they didn't win a championship. And I think that probably would hurt that argument. Jerry Sloan was like the original Bull, and he was honored in, all defensive teams, as was Norm. But I think that you should really be careful about retiring numbers, like with Boston, with the Celtics. I mean, they got so many numbers retired. You see all these guys now wearing these weird numbers because they can't wear the numbers they'd like to have because they're all retired.
Yeah. Now they're not going to do it anymore. Now I think Paul Pierce is the last one, and now they're just going to kind of do it like a ring of honor kind of thing. Because you're right. Yeah. Just so many numbers they retire. But
I think that should be for Hall of Famers or multiple champions. I think that when you start handing that honor out, just because a guy was a solid citizen and put up some solid numbers, I think then it loses its meaning a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like that. Actually, I feel like that about
But
LeBron
I will
in
tell
LA.
you this: that Norm passionately felt his number should be retired, and I think part of that was he was in that same backcourt with Jerry Sloan, and Norm was never going to concede that Jerry Sloan was a better player, and I wouldn't even say Jerry Sloan was either. It was just the fact he came into that organization when they were an expansion team, and I think that's why he had that added association with the franchise, where Norm came over from the Cincinnati Royals in a trade, and then I think that they felt like he wasn't an original Bull, and sometimes that hurts you when they look at honors like that.
That's true. But yeah, like I said, I feel that way about LeBron. Like, I don't think his number should be tried in LA, especially if he only brings in one championship, because that's the LA Lakers. You know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to, at least 3. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because that's greatness. That's what they expect.
Well, he's going back to number 6 next year. So when he's done, he's going to ask the Lakers to retire 23 and 6, just like Kobe.
Boy!
You watch. That's going to be talked about when he retires.
That's going to be crazy. It's got to stop. It's got to stop somewhere.
I know.
And before, just one more question about retiring numbers, and I want to move on to something else. Is there a Bull from the Derrick Rose era, outside of Derrick Rose, obviously? Is there a Bull that you feel like should maybe be considered about him getting his number retired?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that group didn't win any titles. I was a big fan of Joakim and Taj, how hard those guys worked. But in terms of retiring a number, no.
Okay. All right. Now
I know Matt Peck would disagree. Man love with Noah.
Oh, dude, you just don't understand, Mark. You don't understand, Mark.
I don't want to understand. I don't want to understand.
Mark, man, that's a. You can find anybody to love you like that in your life. You are doing something right.
No one can run over a child in the streets. He'll make he'll apologize for him. So no one can do no wrong.
None, zero. Here's a question for me, actually for me and Chris. Do you feel, if healthy, that Derrick Rose and that team would have beaten LeBron one of those years and advanced to an NBA Finals?
I think they would have had a good chance the year he got hurt in 2012. They again had a really good regular season against Miami. They weren't afraid to go up against those guys. And Derrick, that was the lockout shortened season. Derrick had a lot of minor injuries, and it felt like he was just rounding into form for those playoffs. He would have been rested, and I think they would have gained some knowledge from having lost to them the year before. People remember they lost in 5 games, but outside of the first game, which was a Bulls blowout win, all the games were close. Yeah. And I think the Bulls would have gone into a series with Miami that year feeling pretty confident. Remember, that was the year that the Celtics should have beaten Miami was that the Eastern Conference Finals or the semifinals. They're up 3-2 going back to Boston. And that was a game where LeBron had that 48-minute scowl and he scored like 46 points.
Yeah,
that was one of the best games he's ever played because, they lose that game. That would have been, because they had lost to Dallas in the finals the year before.
Right.
There might have been some talk, Pat Riley, not very patient man. They may have considered, trading Chris Bosh or doing something crazy after that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Chris and I didn't think that would have happened. That win would have happened because they still didn't answer who's going to stop LeBron. Because you don't stop LeBron, and then in the fourth quarter you just put him on Derrick Rose because he was just bigger, and it was going to be an issue every single time.
The one thing though, David and I talk about is that of course Derrick Rose didn't mature to the his peak form. And Derrick Rose, he did say, he had something for LeBron the next time they face off in the playoffs. But unfortunately, he got hurt. But like Dave said, LeBron is great. He's taller, he's bigger, and no one else on the Bulls could run point guard and dribble the ball more than 4 times. Thus, cut off the head, and you lose the game.
Yeah, it was going to be a problem.
You know what story I would like to see come to an immediate stop is the whole recollections from Dwayne Wade talking about how close he and LeBron came to coming to the Bulls. I'm so tired of hearing that story. They didn't do it, so forget about it. I mean, can you imagine how many championships that team could have won with Wade, LeBron, Derrick Rose, Luol Deng, Noah?
Don't stop it. Stop it. Come on.
Oh my God, the destruction of the NBA.
you just wonder what they could have done differently. You remember that during that time, LeBron was holding meetings, free agent meetings at some agents' offices in Cleveland, and I heard from very good authority that he was blown away by Tibbs' presentation, because Tibbs, remember, hadn't even coached an NBA game yet as a head coach. Bulls had just hired him, and he just blew LeBron away with his X's and O's on the whiteboard, and LeBron, that was the longest meeting that he had with any team that year. Wow. But there was just so much momentum that built when Riley was able to bring a third guy in. And people talk about 3 max deals, but as you remember, they weren't all max deals. Wade took less, and I think Bosch took less too, so that all 3 of them could play.
That's true. He did.
Yeah, Wade definitely took a pay cut.
Yes, he did. Yes. All right, let me move forward. Talk about this team that we have now, about this new regime that the Bulls have now. Obviously, you got Arturas in, you have Mark Eversley in. When they got Billy Donovan, the team, when they made the trade, get Vooch in here, get 2 All-Stars on the team, still fall short of the playoffs though. Coming into the offseason, is this the most optimistic you've been for a Bulls season in the past few years? Like in the upcoming season for this team?
Yeah, I would think so, just because of the fact that they've got 2 guys who've made All-Star teams in Zach and Vucevic, but losing that first round pick, that hurt. They're not going to be involved in getting a premier talent in this draft. Their free agent situation's kind of muddled. If they want to get aggressive and try to go after a starting level point guard, they're going to have to dump a couple of salaries. So I think what they're going to end up doing is they're going to operate as an over the cap team. And I don't think they're going to go big game hunting for any kind of major free agent. I think that they'll probably add a guy, but I don't think it's going to be anybody the fan base is going to be that excited about. And when you look at Detroit getting the first pick with Cade Cunningham, some of the other teams that have taken a big jump. I mean, look at Atlanta. They were a team in a similar situation, the Bulls, where they bottomed out. They drafted well. They signed 2 or 3, quality value free agents with Bogdanovich and Gallinari, and those guys have really helped them. And DeAndre Hunter hasn't even played in these playoffs because of the knee injury. Atlanta is a team on the rise. The Knicks have done some great work with Tom Thibodeau. Charlotte is moving up with LaMelo Ball, establishing himself as their point guard. It's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs next year. And then, if they don't make the playoffs again next year, what happens with Zach LaVine? He'll be a free agent. It's, Arturas he's got his work cut out for him. I appreciated the boldness of the Vucevic trade, but he might have been a little early in pushing all his chips to the middle, because they gave up a premier draft pick this year, and Vucevic is 32?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very good player. He's a very good player, but I don't think he's the kind of guy you build a team around.
Yeah, no, he's got a couple years left at least. I would say about 2 max that he has left to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but hopefully he's not the best player on the team, right? Hopefully that he's like a 2A. Yeah, in a couple of years on the Bulls.
Well, the key is what Patrick Williams is going to become, because Arturas kind of stuck his neck out. He took Williams before a lot of people thought he should have been drafted last year, and their hopes are that he's going to become, if not an all-star, a close to all-star caliber small forward, or maybe a power forward in this league, and that he'll be that third piece that can go with Zach, and maybe Vooch will be gone by that point, but. If Patrick Williams develops into what this front office thinks he can be, well, then they could have a really nice squad. What we saw from Patrick Williams last year was a guy that reminded me a lot of Wendell Carter Jr. He was reluctant to shoot. No.
That's too far, Mark. I'm not gonna allow that.
I'm talking about his attitude on the offensive end. I think he's going to be a much better player. But he didn't want to shoot. If we've all played the game, who doesn't want to shoot the ball?
Look, Mark, I try to, okay, so I'm trying to phrase it. How many, with Laurie Market, okay, we all know what Laurie Market is right now.
Who?
We gave him like three years to show us something. And I'm like, okay, with Patrick Williams, I know he's a fine player, but not wanting to shoot the ball is a mental thing. That's like a personality. And it's hard to change who you are as a player. You know what I'm saying? So that's who he is. So I'm not going to wait 3 or 4 years for this guy to turn. I'm going to wait next year. I better see something from him that shows me that he wants to score, that he wants to impact the game offensively, and not just play the game, have fun, and build your stat sheet up. I want to see a guy out there who wants to take control of the game offensively, understands that it's okay to be great. Mark, where do you stand on Patrick Williams as far as like how long do you give him? How many years do you give him to like show you something, to prove to you that he could be an all-star big player?
I'll give him 2 more years. He's 19. I'll give him 2 years to see what he can do. One thing that I thought was really encouraging was, the TV cameras caught him at a game in Milwaukee, a playoff game with Billy Donovan, sitting there watching Giannis and those guys go to work. And I think that shows a lot about what the young man wants to become, that he wants to see the best players and wants to try to pick up things from their games that he can implement in his. I think, as you said, though, Chris, I think that it is a mindset to be a scorer. And, the Bulls kept trying to, and that's why, I'm not comparing him to Wendell Carter Jr. He's a much better prospect. But that's what the Bulls kept telling Wendell, is that when you catch the ball in the mid post, look at the rim. If you got an open shot, take it. And he never would do it. Now, if 2 years from now, we're still saying that about Patrick Williams, then the pick will be a bust.
Yeah, agreed. I like the fact that, and this play always stuck out in my mind when he got the ball at the top of the key wide open for 3, and he passed it to Garrett Temple, and Garrett Temple threw it back at him, violently yelled at him, "Shoot the ball. Like, what are you doing?" And he shot it, and it went in. And he was like, "Dude, don't do that again. Like, shoot the ball."
Wendell Carter had like a mental block of like not wanting to succeed at basketball offensively. Like he just blocked himself mentally to like succeed at basketball. I don't know. It's weird with Wendell Carter. I just hope Patrick Williams, man. We see them. I'm sure, Mark, you've seen the video of him playing with,
Trae Young,
Spencer Dinwiddie, and it's a run, whatever. You playing pickup, whatever. But he looked like he had a mentality. And Billy Donovan said at the end of the year that he said the guy was never asked to do that in the game. He was never asked to take somebody off the dribble 1-on-1 repeatedly during the game. It's something he just was not accustomed to doing. Something he's never done as a player. So hopefully next year, because he scores like 17 points easily. It's amazing, right? He scores like 8 points just being athletic, and then like the other ones like free throws and a couple of jump shots. He has like 17 points, and he's barely breaking the sweat. So.
I think that he could be a really good player. We're just going to have to wait and see, if he develops on the course that the Bulls are projected for him, because there were a number of things they could have done with that pick. There were rumors that teams are trying to trade ahead of the Bulls to get Patrick Williams, and the Bulls like Tyrese Halliburton, but they like Williams more. And Halliburton had a really good rookie year in Sacramento, and the Bulls need a point guard. So we'll all find out in the next couple of years which of these guys take that next step. And given the fact that Williams didn't even start a game in college and got a chance to start every game with the Bulls, I think that's really going to speed up his development.
Yeah, and like you said, the best ability is availability, and he was available every single night in that starting lineup, man. He was there, so he definitely learned. So he definitely learned. I would give him that for learning it. But please, I'm sorry, Mark. That Wendell Carter Jr. comparison just hit me somewhere, Mark. I don't hear that, man. That just hit me somewhere. Oh my God. Okay, let's talk about another player that definitely upset me, and that was Lauri Markkanen.
Oh boy.
I was pretty out. Chris knows this. I spent many a day on this show talking about my love for Lauri, showing off the hot sauce that I bought from my friend in Finland, and how much I love Lauri Markkanen. I truly do. I truly had love for him, but now that love is gone and it's over with. Do you think there is a team out there, or do you still think that Lauri Markkanen can be what I think he can be, which is a guy that can be that 20-point a game, 8, 9, 10 rebound guy, shooting that high percentage from the field and from 3, and just being an absolute problem for a team? Is there still a team out there that he can do that with?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's 7 feet tall and can shoot threes is going to get him a rich contract in this marketplace. I mean, you look what Davis Bertans got from Washington, a career backup. What was it, like 5 years, 80 million, something like that? So Lauri's going to get paid, and I don't think he's going to have any shortage of suitors. I just think at this point, with the new front office now a year into their run, I think they've pretty much decided that he's not the player that they want to have as a focal point of their master plan. So I don't think they're going to extend themselves in any great direction to keep Lauri in Chicago. I think they'd love to be able to sign and trade him, but that's going to be difficult because a lot of teams have cap space. They can just sign Lauri outright. I'd be shocked if Lauri was in a Bulls uniform next year.
Yeah, and you know what, Mark? I think Lauri told himself he didn't want to be a part of this master plan with his game, because I think they wanted him, like you said, the skill set, the true 7-footer that can shoot like he does. you want a guy like that on your team. But he told them with his gameplay that I don't want to be part of that master plan. So I think he did that to himself.
Well, and I think that both the front office and the coaching staff really kind of slapped Lowry in the face. They benched him one game after they got Vucevic and said, okay, you're going to come off the bench and be a small forward at 7-1.
Yes.
I thought that was unbelievably cold to tell this kid who's, you know, he's obviously from a different culture and, you know, kind of a laid back kid. And you basically told him, you don't fit here. We're going to start Daniel Tice at power forward, and you're going to play small forward, trying to chase around small wings at 7-1. They did him an incredible disservice. Mm-hmm. They may have cost him a little bit of money in the free agent marketplace, and they basically told him, you have no value to us. So I don't know any scenario where Lowry and his agent would even be interested in coming back to the Bulls.
Yeah, I hear that. I think they also thought he would be gone also in a trade. I didn't even expect him to come back to the team after that trade deadline. I thought he'd be gone, you know, to get Lonzo Ball here at least. But, you know, Daniel Griffin wanted too much, according to AK.
Well, I think what ended up happening was that there was probably dual negotiations. They were talking to Orlando about Vucevic. They were talking about not a sign and trade, but it had been a straight deal for Markkanen and for Ball. And probably New Orleans was asking for a first-round pick as a sweetener. Mm-hmm. And then they traded 2 first-round picks in the Vucevic deal. And AK had to go back to David Griffin and go, I don't have any more picks. I can't do anything. And that deal just died on the vine. And as the season wore on, Lonzo Ball kept playing better and better, and he was getting more minutes. Because I think at the beginning of the year, Stan Van Gundy, who's now out, which is, you know, that's a whole different story too. I think he kind of soured on Lonzo. But then as the season went on, you know, they were playing Zion at the point. It was just a weird way that season finished. They told Lonzo to go stand in the corner and be a spot up 3-point shooter. I'm sure LeVar wasn't real happy about that. So, you know, New Orleans is going to have some fence mending to do if they want to keep Lonzo Ball. I just think that his salary demands may price him out of the Bulls' range. I don't think they're going to be comfortable throwing a max offer sheet at Lonzo Ball. I just don't think they are.
Yeah, but I've been saying all along, I don't think they want to spend a bunch of money on Lonzo Ball. I don't think they see him as the answer. If you got to spend a max, you got to spend money on the player. You don't want him to hold you back from like winning the championship. And if he's not succeeding on that team, it's something. I mean, he's a good player, but like you should be better. You have like one of the best rookies ever, and you're not really running point guard. You're not succeeding. You're not helping them win. Something's wrong with his game. Maybe he needs a new scenery, or I don't know. But he's getting better every time I watch him play. He gets better. But to me, there's an issue with your game. If you're on that team with that talent and you can't maximize your game, there's something off.
Well, I saw something interesting on Twitter late in the season where somebody put side-by-side statistics up. And, you know, this is player A, this is player B. And the numbers were for Lonzo Ball and Kobe White, and they're almost identical. Because Lonzo's assists, people think, well, he's just passing whiz. Well, as I mentioned, they took the ball out of his hands. They either had Zion or Brandon Ingram initiating offense. Lonzo only averaged like 5 or 6 assists. You know, he didn't really stand out as a floor general.
He does it right, exactly.
His scoring numbers, his shooting percentages were almost identical to Kobe White.
Even in college, I remember him like really being a floor general per se. It was he could pass. He made nice passes, right? But he doesn't really run an offense.
Yeah, he scored.
Well, when he came into the league with the Lakers, I mean, he was the guy with the ball until LeBron got there, of course.
Also, another career he kind of hampered, I guess.
Right.
Kind of set back. But yeah, Chris is definitely the one who talked me out of Lonzo Ball, because the point he kept making to me was he doesn't move the needle for your team. He isn't the guy that you get to say, okay, we got that guy. Now we're ready to go win. And he's right. Like, there's not a needle moving point guard, at least one that I've seen in free agency. But there is one that I would like the Bulls to take a shot at, and that's Devontae Graham. I really do like Devontae.
Are you on board me now? You on board?
I never left. I was on board you from a long
I love
time.
Devontae Graham.
I never left you
He
on
is
Devontae
such
Graham.
a good point guard.
Dude, when I would watch the games on Bulls Outside, he always stood out. Like when we would watch Devontae,
I love Devontae Graham.
Always stood out. And he's just in a bad situation now, because what are you gonna do? You can't bench LaMelo.
He's like a mini Terrell Brandon. Meaning in the way that he can't score like Terrell Brandon. I love Terrell Brandon. Oh, that's my guy. But anyway, he just Devontae Graham, Mark, to me, he could pass when he needs to pass. He can shoot when he needs to shoot. He plays defense. He doesn't mess up fast breaks, like Chris Duhon. he just like, has a pro assistant about him by being a professional point guard.
Yes.
And I think he'd be good at any team. Please come to the Bulls. All right. Because you don't need to max out. You know, him, he could be a solid point guard for years, right? And then you spend money on another player.
Yeah, because his money is going to be low.
To me, though, he's more of a Ben Gordon, though, than a point guard. I don't think he's really a guy that you want to say, we need you to run our offense, make sure everybody gets the ball in the spots where they want it, and be a half-court facilitator. I think he's more of a scoring guard. He's a very good player.
How many people are like that, though? I hear your point. I think he's more of a point guard than Ben Gordon, but that's not saying a lot. But like, and I love Ben Gordon. But how many point guards are there out there like that can just run a team and score 15 points? Unless you're like from
well, you're right. They're a dying breed, and that's why people are talking about guys like Chris Paul and Mike Conley and Kyle Lowry in this free agent class. That for a team that's trying to get some stability, that's trying to advance the development of their young guys, that maybe it's worth trying to bring in one of those guys. But the three guys I mentioned are all 30 million plus, so those guys aren't coming to Chicago. We've heard the name Spencer Dinwiddie, who was here, for a cup of coffee a few years ago and really developed into a nice player in Brooklyn. And I think that might have been a C-Red Fred trade. Thaddeuk Johnson for Dinwiddie. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him. But Chris and I, we were big.
We're talking about Thaddeus Young, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, obviously, yes. No, we were big. I mean,
obviously, Dinwiddie, he's coming off that partial ACL tear, and that always is going to scare you a little bit. But he's a guy, 6'5", 6'6", who can see over the top of defenses, and I think who could give you a different dimension to a point guard. How his fit would be with Zach, I'm not sure if it's ideal. But I don't know if there is anybody other than a Chris Paul or an old school point guard that you want to play in with Zach, because Zach likes to have the ball in his hands.
He does.
Yeah, that's kind of like my point. And by the way, Dave's trying to get out there. We were big Dinwiddie fans.
Dinwiddie fans.
Saw Dinwiddie. Yes. It was like why? Who is this guy? He's really good. He's really tall, and he can score. He's he's a scorer. He could dribble. He could play defense. And we knew right away he would not be with the Wolves.
We knew it. We knew he was good.
We knew that he was making Valentine look bad, and then he can't be on the Bulls.
It was over.
But I hope he comes back, because that's why I kind of like Devontae Graham, because you can't get everything right. Like, I like when people complain about players and it's like, well, he can't rebound, he can't shoot. And I'm like, well, there's only one Akeem Olajuwon, right?
You know what I mean?
Either somebody's gonna be too short, or can't shoot as well, or can't dribble. Devontae Graham has the middle ground as an okay point guard, but he's better than average, right? A little slightly better than average. Dinwiddie, he's not a true point guard, but wants to score. But hey, I rather set up with them guys than either an old vet like Conley, who always gets. I love Conley, but he always gets hurt all the time.
Always hurt, yeah.
Or have Archie Diago come on the bench again. We don't. I want better than that. I think we do better than that. So I'll be happy with Devontae Graham. And of course, Dinwiddie, even though we are coming off the injury, he's still. I think he'd be a very good player in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know what I'm worried about? Given AK's background, I'm so afraid they're going to bring Goran Dragic in here, and he's not a point guard at this point in his career. He's towards the end. He can still score, but if they bring in him in here thinking he's going to be their starting point guard, that would be a miscalculation at best.
You saw in the playoffs, right? That he kind of hit the ceiling, right, in his career, right? So he's never been a floor general, really, though. He's
no.
But,
it wasn't his thing. But he
was you look
stabilizing.
At one guy we never seem to talk about, and I've done my own podcast where it always gets brought up last. Why not bring Derrick Rose back? I mean, if you're going to go for a veteran point guard, why not bring Derrick back?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
I don't have no issue with it at all.
I mean, we always talk about those three expensive guys, then we go to Spencer Dinwiddie and Devontae Graham and Goran Dragic and Dennis Schroeder, and nobody ever talks about Derrick Rose. I mean, I guess the assumption is that Tibbs won't let him get away, but Derrick still loves his hometown. If you give him a competitive 2-year offer that's similar to what New York's offering, why wouldn't he come back?
Yeah, I agree. I've told Chris that every team he's gone to has been close to Chicago. It's like you can tell he kind of doesn't want to leave the area. I mean, we got Cleveland. New York is probably the furthest he's been, but you got Cleveland and Minnesota and Detroit.
Yeah.
Those three places, they're very close to the city. So you're right. He's a Chicago guy. Dude, I would love it. Yes, you bring Derrick Rose back. Yes,
and he's still relatively young. He's just not the old Derrick Rose. So
Right.
And the thing is, Kobe's most likely going to miss the first month of the season. So you could play Derrick as your starter, and then taper off his minutes as Kobe's ready to come back, and have him, kind of take Kobe under his wing and help him develop. It probably won't happen because there's got to be somebody, whether it's at the ownership level or this new front office doesn't want to rekindle what happened from the last group. I think feelings will get in the way from making this happen. But when you look at the point guards that are available in terms of veteran free agents that are realistic, let's say, Derrick's at the top of the list.
Yeah,
it's true, man. It's true. And you have a realistic shot at also. Like everybody we mentioned, you have a true realistic shot at getting him. That's very true.
I think you can get Dinwiddie. He's coming off an injury, and Brooklyn's loaded with guards. They don't want to pay big money to re-sign him. So I think Dinwiddie's a realistic possibility. I just don't know what this current front office thinks about how his fit would be with Levine and the rest of them.
That's very true.
And also, you get the guys who's probably not going to be at his best initially, right? But has something to play for, right? So you want to get the best out of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Mark. Let me get to this final topic here, and I got to talk to you about Scottie Pippen, man. Chris's boy, Scottie Pippen, saying some things out here. Chris and I always take what Scottie say with a grain of salt because this is kind of always what we see from Scottie and how he speaks. Every year it's something. Are you surprised by these things that he's saying? Are you kind of like, what are you doing, Scottie? Or is it kind of like par for the course for you?
No, I've been involved either interviewing Scottie Pippen or hearing of his interviews for the last 30 years. So that doesn't surprise me at all. The one thing that was hilarious was the one shot was Crop with the big bottle of bourbon right in front of him. And I'm like, you probably shouldn't have drank so much of it before you started the interview,
Yeah, it's
46%. It is no joke. It is no joke, man. Yeah, like it, man. And I mean, it came out when it happened, and I sent it to Chris, and Chris was like, "Oh, Scotty's doing it again."
Mark, every year, Mark, I should Mark. Every year, I expect Mark Pippen to say something kind of crazy, outlandish, once a year. Yeah. He does this once a year, and it happened for a long time. I thought this year was gonna be done. Like, oh my god, I went the whole year about Scotty saying something weird, and then this happens.
No. You know what the unfortunate thing was in watching the Dan Patrick clip, I've seen it a few times now.
Right.
And I hesitate to say this, but it almost seemed like Scotty didn't know what the word racist meant. Right. He was describing someone who was disloyal.
Right.
And Dan Patrick asked him point blank, "Do you think Phil Jackson is a racist?" And he goes, "I have no problem with that." That's not what I'm saying, but okay, you can throw that on too. Right. I just thought the whole thing got really uncomfortable, and Dan Patrick, you could see, was trying to help him by saying, "Wait a minute," by saying that not giving you the ball in that situation was a racial decision. You calling him a racist, and he gave Scotty an easy out, and Scotty, in his infinite wisdom, decided he would just dig himself in deeper. So I just thought that was a tortured sequence there, and I just thought he got himself in a bad situation. He had an easy out. He got a lifeline he could have grabbed onto, pulled himself up out of the water, and instead he just went down for the count.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Scotty. It's amazing as a fan because as a fan, you watch these teams, stuff goes on, right? Everyone's not perfect, whatnot. But when you put back the curtain, it's like it's just. I'm still a big fan of Scotty Pippen, but like, if you're gonna come out like David and I talk about this off camera, if you're going to say so much racist, he said a racial move. I don't know what that means, but whatever. But if you're going to say so much racist, either like you said, Mark, he doesn't know what it means, but you have to present evidence. Like you just can't throw it out. You gotta say,
right.
A basketball play evidence is not.
Right.
So you have to. And you just can't say, "Well, I was in the locker room." Okay, fine. He coached a ton of players, he had a ton of teammates. Yeah. Are they supporting you? Are they backing you up in this? Do they have tape? I think Mark. I think you said that. Like I said, Mark. I think he doesn't quite know what it means, and I think he's used the term loosely. And then
he went on to say that Michael Jordan basically positioned the cameras so that he could give this speech to Steve Kerr about if they double team me, be ready because I'll pass you the ball. Like there was a whole production of the documentary crew that Michael was just playing to the camera.
Right.
They're down, they have a chance to win the championship, and he's worried about where the cameras are, so he would look good talking to Steve Kerr. That was almost more ridiculous than the Phil Jackson.
I'm gonna fight you against that. I'm gonna fight you against that, Mark. I don't know if my debut feel. I think Mike. No. I'm not saying. I think Mike knew the cameras was there. Obviously, he's how many championships he won? This is like nothing to him, right?
That was the fifth.
Right, the fifth, right? So like I'm pretty sure he knew the camera. He knows being filmed. The whole team knew it was being filmed.
I'm pretty sure about to put on a show. Michael Jordan.
No. I'm not saying.
At that point in the game, you're not paying attention.
Don't act like he didn't know the cameras were there.
At all.
Like come on, man. He knew the camera was there. He knew it'd be cool.
Well,
I give him credit because he's Mike. He's like, I'm so dope. Hey, guess what? David W all game, man. Come on, being, this is probably going to happen like this. Okay, doing it. And let's cool for the thing. I think he knew what was going on. That's how good he is.
Scotty said it was all fake, that he was just playing to the camera.
But I don't understand. I think, but
he didn't even mean that. He said that if Stockton hadn't come over to double team, he would have never passed it. Well,
yeah.
Michael is smart enough to know how to get a winning basketball play. If Steve Kerr's got a wide open free throw line jumper, he's smart enough to give him the ball. But the whole thing to insinuate that whole sideline thing was choreographed, like it's the WWE or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Come on, man. No, Chris, I can't roll that.
No. I'm just saying the part about him dodging, he knew the camera was there. He's trying to be. This is why Michael's great. He knew. He made it look cool. That's all. The whole part about it, about orchestrating it and like acting like you could like predict what's going on the court. No, that play was there that all game, and Mike was like, "This would be cool if I say this for the cameras," and it happens, and it happened. But that's why to your point, I don't know what Scotty means when he said that, like orchestrated, because like I don't know what that means. I really don't know. But
Scotty was obviously so offended by that documentary that he just can't let it go. I mean, he's still seething. Still seething about the way he was portrayed by Michael in several instances, and he just can't let it go. I think for the rest of his life, that's going to be with him. He's just not going to let that go.
I wonder. It's like the straw that broke the cameras back. That was it. That's the last straw. He's like, I can't take it anymore. I wonder. See, is anybody else backing up Scotty in this? Is anybody coming out? Is Ron Harper or anybody, any of his old teammates at all? I say anything to the media. I know there are other people.
Scotty's radioactive right now. His team, nobody wants to touch him. It'd be interesting. We're going to tape our Give Me the Hot Sauce tomorrow, and I know Stacey King loves Scotty, so it'd be interesting to see what he's got to say about it. So, after you get done listening to this podcast, check out that one, the new episode, because cross promotion. It's all about Dave.
That's why he's Mark Shanowski, baby.
Because I'm curious. I'm curious if Stacey will really, because I know that he felt like what Scotty said was way out of bounds. I'll be curious to see how much he wants to say on the record about it.
Yeah,
that's true. I think a lot of teammates are also waiting to see the book also before they say anything. They don't want to.
Yeah.
Am I in the book?
Right. Let me see what you say about me. Okay. All right. I'm ready. Let's go. Yeah. Mark, before I let you get out of here, I'll be remiss if I didn't ask you about Bulls Outsiders and how you felt about us, because John and Matt and myself always care. We always these kind of things and these kind of stories about what you would felt. So, because we always felt like, and I'm speaking for Matt, because Matt always felt like he was bothering people. We were like the kids, poking you and getting on your nerves and doing things. But I always said, like, well, Mark is a professional. If we were getting on his nerves, he would either let us know or we would know, some kind of way what was going on. But how did you feel?
Well, as you remember, I would usually watch the first half back in the green room, and then I was gone in the second half, because